The weight of the lie was heavier than the platinum case of his Patek Philippe watch. As Marcus Thorne fastened the diamond tennis bracelet around his mistress's slender wrist, the cold click of the clasp echoed the sound of a door shutting on his marriage. He told his pregnant wife, Eleanor, it was a mandatory corporate leadership summit in Geneva, a necessary evil for his career. But tonight there was no summit. There was only the Phoenix Gala, the most exclusive charity event of the year, and Katrina Lowell on his arm. He was entering a world of power and influence, a world he believed his quiet, gentle wife could never understand. He had no idea that the world he was about to enter wasn't just her world. She had built it from the ground up. Marcus Thorne lived a life curated for envy. His corner office on the 54th floor of the Sterling Tower offered a panoramic view of downtown Manhattan, a daily reminder of the heights he had scaled. As a senior vice president at Apex Ventures, one of the city's most ruthless venture capital firms, he didn't just navigate the cutthroat world of high finance, he thrived in it. His suits were bespoke, his shoes were hand-cobbled in Italy, and his ambition was as sharp and unforgiving as the city's skyline. His home life, in his carefully constructed opinion, had once matched this aesthetic. The sprawling Soho loft, with its exposed brick and minimalist art, was a testament to good taste. His wife, Eleanor Vance, had been the perfect complement to his rising star. She was graceful, intelligent, with a quiet warmth that people found disarming. She came from a respectable, though not ostentatious family, and possessed an understated elegance that spoke of good breeding rather than flashy wealth. For the first 5 years of their marriage, she had been his anchor and his showcase. But lately, Marcus felt a chasm growing between the man he was in the boardroom and the man he was expected to be at home. The problem, as he saw it, was the pregnancy. Eleanor was 7 months along, and the transformation had been more than just physical. Her world had shrunk. Her conversations, once about modern art or geopolitical shifts, now revolved around obstetrician appointments, nursery color palettes, and the merits of different prenatal yoga classes. The vibrant woman he had married seemed to be fading, replaced by a vessel for his future child. He loved the idea of a son, an heir to the Thorne name. But the practical, day-to-day reality of it all, the swollen ankles, the dietary restrictions, the nesting, was profoundly unglamorous. It was domestic, it was common, and it bored him to his core. He craved the thrill of the new, the sharp edge of risk, the validation of a woman who saw him not as a future father, but as the titan of industry he was. He found that in Katrina Lowell. Katrina was everything Eleanor was not. She was a fiery, ambitious brand ambassador for a luxury lifestyle company, a woman whose professional life was a whirlwind of product launches, influencer events, and champagne receptions. She was 28, 5 years younger than Eleanor, and she looked at Marcus with an undisguised hunger that he found intoxicating. She didn't want to talk about baby-proofing the apartment. She wanted to talk about closing deals, about the new rooftop bar at the Baccarat Hotel, about the scandalous affair of a rival CEO. She was a mirror reflecting the most exciting version of himself. Their affair had started 3 months ago, a predictable cliché of clandestine meetings in boutique hotels and hushed late-night phone calls. To Marcus, it wasn't just about sex. It was a reclamation of his identity. With Katrina, he was powerful, desired, and unfettered by the impending, suffocating reality of fatherhood. The Phoenix Gala was the culmination of everything he wanted. It was the city's most prestigious annual charity event, a gathering of the financial, tech, and cultural elite. Getting an invitation was a feat in itself. Apex Ventures had a corporate table, and Marcus had pulled every string he could to secure 2 seats. This wasn't just a party. It was the ultimate networking opportunity. It was a chance to be seen with the right people, to cement his status, and to impress his firm's CEO, Richard Sterling, who was a co-chair of the event. Taking Eleanor was out of the question. He could already picture it, her in a sensible maternity gown, sipping sparkling water, wanting to leave by 10. She would be a liability, an anchor dragging him down into a sea of polite, dull conversation. He needed a partner who would sparkle, who would amplify his presence. He needed Katrina. The lie came to him easily, fully formed and polished. It's a last-minute leadership summit, he had told Eleanor a week prior, watching her carefully as she folded a tiny onesie. Geneva. Richard Sterling is making it mandatory for all senior VPs. Something about global market synergy. It's dreadfully dull, honestly, but you know how it is. Eleanor had looked up, her expression soft and trusting. Oh, Marcus, that's a shame. For the whole weekend. Afraid so. I leave Friday afternoon, back late Sunday night. I'll hate being away from you. He walked over and kissed her forehead, inhaling the familiar, gentle scent of her lavender soap. A pang of something, guilt perhaps, or a faint memory of a simpler love, pricked at him, but he pushed it down. This was a necessary sacrifice for the life he was building. Their life, he rationalized. The connections he made at this gala would benefit their family in the long run. Now, on the Friday evening of the gala, the lie was in full motion. He packed a carry-on bag with a few changes of clothes as a prop, kissed Eleanor goodbye, and told her he would call her as soon as he landed. Her hand rested on her belly as she saw him out. Be safe, Marcus. We'll miss you. I'll miss you more, he said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He took a cab 2 blocks before redirecting it to the Carlisle, where Katrina was waiting. When he opened the door to her suite, she was a vision in emerald green silk, a dress that clung to her in all the right places. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and her smile was dazzling. Well, hello, Mr. Thorne, she purred, wrapping her arms around his neck. Ready to own the night? He pulled her close, the sleek fabric of her dress cool against his hands. The night is just the beginning. He presented her with a small velvet box from jeweler Harry Winston. Inside was the diamond tennis bracelet he'd purchased the week before. It was an extravagant, unapologetic statement. Katrina gasped. Marcus, it's breathtaking. Only the best for you, he said, his voice smooth. He fastened it around her wrist. It was a perfect fit. He imagined the same bracelet on Eleanor's slightly swollen wrist and winced internally. It wouldn't look right. It belonged here, in this world of glamour and ambition. As they rode in the black town car toward the St. Regis Grand Astoria, where the gala was being held, Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. The lie was behind him, the city lights blurred past the window, and the beautiful, adoring woman beside him was his ticket to the inner circle. He had successfully compartmentalized his life. On one side, Eleanor and the quiet, impending domesticity of their future. On the other, Katrina and the glittering, high-stakes world where he truly belonged. Tonight, he was stepping fully into that world, leaving the other one far behind. He was confident, untouchable, and utterly blind to the fact that the 2 worlds he had so carefully separated were on a catastrophic collision course. Eleanor Vance watched the door click shut behind Marcus, the sound echoing in the sudden quiet of the loft. She stood there for a long moment, one hand resting protectively on the taut curve of her stomach, where her son was restlessly shifting. She heard the faint ding of the elevator, and then silence. The lie Marcus had told didn't just hang in the air, It had a physical presence, a cold, heavy weight that settled in her chest. For weeks, she had been sensing a shift in him, a subtle but persistent distancing. It was in the way his phone was always angled away from her, the way late-night board meetings had become more frequent, the vague and hurried answers to her questions about his day. At first, she'd attributed it to the stress of his job and the impending life change of a baby. She had tried to be more understanding, more supportive, giving him the space she thought he needed. But a woman's intuition, especially one sharpened by the protective instincts of pregnancy, is a formidable thing. It was a collection of small, almost insignificant details that had begun to form a larger, more terrifying picture. A scent on his collar that wasn't his cologne or her perfume. An uncharacteristic defensiveness when she picked up his phone to check the time. The slow erosion of the easy intimacy they had once shared. The lie about the Geneva summit was his most audacious yet. Marcus was a meticulous planner. A mandatory international trip for his entire executive team would have been on his calendar for months, not sprung on him with a week's notice. He would have been complaining about the logistics, the jet lag, the sheer inconvenience of it all. Instead, he had been oddly serene, almost excited. The unraveling of his deceit had happened 2 days ago, born from a mundane chore. While gathering his suits for dry cleaning, a receipt had fallen from the pocket of his favorite Tom Ford blazer, the one he saved for special occasions. It wasn't from a Swiss airline or a Geneva hotel. It was from Harry Winston, dated the previous Tuesday. The purchase was for a Serena diamond bracelet, and the price had made her gasp. Her heart had hammered against her ribs. It wasn't an early anniversary gift. Theirs was in the spring. It wasn't for her birthday. A push present, perhaps? The thought was hopeful, but it didn't feel right. Marcus's recent emotional distance didn't align with such a thoughtful, extravagant gesture. Driven by a cold, sickening premonition, she had done something she hadn't done in their entire marriage. She had opened his personal laptop. It wasn't password protected. He was arrogant in his security, as he was in everything else. It didn't take long. In his archived emails, she found the confirmation. 2 tickets to the Phoenix Gala, scheduled for this very Friday night. An email chain with a Katrina Lowell confirmed their plans to meet beforehand. A quick search of the name brought up a glossy, public Instagram profile, filled with photos of a stunning blonde at exclusive parties, her bio proclaiming her a luxury brand, strategist and lifestyle enthusiast. Eleanor felt the air leave her lungs as if she'd been punched. The betrayal was absolute, a clean, sharp blade through the heart of their life together. Tears had come then, hot and furious. She had cried for her marriage, for the man she thought she knew, and for the child who would be born into a broken home. She allowed herself one night to shatter. She lay in their bed, clutching the cold, impersonal receipt, and let the grief wash over her. But as the sun rose on a new day, something else rose within her, a steely, quiet resolve. Eleanor Vance was not a victim. Her quiet demeanor was often mistaken for fragility, a mistake Marcus had clearly made. What he failed to understand was that her calmness was a product of immense strength, not weakness. While Marcus was busy climbing his corporate ladder, Eleanor had been quietly building an empire of her own. For the past 2 years, she had been pouring her energy, her intellect, and a significant portion of the inheritance her forward-thinking grandmother had left her into a project she was passionate about, the Vance Foundation for Sustainable Innovation. It was a non-profit venture fund dedicated to identifying and scaling technologies that could solve real-world environmental problems: clean water, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture. She had assembled a small, brilliant team working out of a discreet office in the meatpacking district, and operated with a level of discretion that would have shocked her husband. She kept it separate from their life together, wanting it to be hers alone, a legacy to build for their child that had nothing to do with Marcus's world of predatory capitalism. And the Phoenix Gala, it wasn't just another charity event. It was her event. The gala was the official launch of the Vance Foundation. The mysterious, anonymous philanthropist who had been generating buzz in society columns for months was her. The event's name was her own private joke. A phoenix rises from the ashes. She had planned it as a triumphant surprise, a moment where she would finally reveal her work to the world and to her husband. She had imagined his shock, his pride, his awe. She had envisioned them as a true power couple, their different worlds finally merging. Now that dream was a bitter ruin. But the event itself was not. It was now something else entirely. A stage. Her first call was to Alistair Finch. Alistair was her family's lawyer, a sharp, silver-haired man in his late 60s who had been her mentor and confidant since her grandmother's passing. He sat on the board of her foundation and was one of the few people who knew the full scope of her work. "Alistair," she had said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "There's been a change of plans regarding the gala. A personal complication." She explained everything, omitting none of the painful details. He listened patiently, his silence a comforting presence on the other end of the line. When she finished, he didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. He offered strategy. "The best revenge, my dear Eleanor," he said, his voice a low rumble, "is not loud, emotional confrontation. It is quiet, irrefutable success. Let him walk into your world on his own 2 feet. Let him expose himself. The stage is set. All you have to do is take your place on it." Together they refined the plan. Security at the St. Regis was alerted to watch for Marcus Thorne and his guest, but not to stop them. The seating chart was subtly altered. Key investors and board members of Apex Ventures, including the CEO Richard Sterling, were now conveniently seated with a direct line of sight to Marcus's table. The evening's program was adjusted to heighten the drama of the founder's reveal. Eleanor spent the next 2 days in a maelstrom of focused activity. She had fittings for her custom gown, a deep sapphire blue creation by Oscar de la Renta that was both elegant and accommodating of her pregnancy. She memorized her speech, her words taking on a new, sharper meaning. Phrases about integrity, building a lasting legacy, and the importance of a solid foundation were no longer just business rhetoric. They were a personal manifesto. She was not a scorned wife seeking petty revenge. She was a queen reclaiming her castle. She was a mother protecting her child's future from the poison of his father's deceit. When she looked in the mirror on the evening of the gala, she barely recognized the woman staring back. The grief was still there, a shadow deep in her eyes, but it was overlaid with a powerful, luminous certainty. She was Eleanor Vance, founder and chairwoman of a multi-million-dollar foundation, and tonight she was going to introduce herself to her husband for the very first time. The St. Regis Grand Astoria was a bastion of old New York splendor, its marble lobby and soaring, frescoed ceilings designed to make mortals feel like gods for an evening. Tonight, it was transformed for the inaugural Phoenix Gala. Towering arrangements of white orchids and delphiniums filled the air with a delicate perfume. The sound of a string quartet echoed softly, a civilized counterpoint to the low hum of hundreds of conversations. Waitstaff moved like phantoms through the glittering crowd, balancing trays of champagne and exquisitely crafted canapes. This was the nexus of power in the city, and for Marcus Thorne, it felt like coming home. He stepped out of the town car and offered his hand to Katrina. She emerged like a starlet on a red carpet, the emerald of her dress catching the light, the Harry Winston bracelet on her wrist scattering it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. She was breathtaking, and she was his. As they walked up the grand staircase, Marcus felt a proprietary pride. He saw the appreciative glances from other men, the flicker of envy in the eyes of their wives, and it fueled his ego like premium gasoline. "This is incredible, Marcus," Katrina breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the opulence of the grand ballroom. "You weren't exaggerating." "I never do," he said smoothly, guiding her through the throng. His hand rested possessively on the small of her back. He was in his element, scanning the room, identifying the key players. He saw tech billionaires, real estate moguls, political figures, and the crème de la crème of Wall Street. This was his tribe. He quickly spotted his target, Richard Sterling, the formidable CEO of Apex Ventures, holding court near the main stage. Sterling was a man whose approval Marcus craved with an almost pathetic desperation. He was old school, a corporate predator from an era before work-life balance was part of the vernacular. "There's Sterling. Let's go say hello," Marcus said, his voice tight with anticipation. He navigated them through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting people with a firm handshake or a familiar nod. "Jonathan, good to see you." "Senator, you're looking well." He introduced Katrina as "my associate," a deliberately vague term that hinted at both professional and personal intimacy. When they reached Sterling's circle, Marcus waited for a pause before making his move. "Richard, good evening." Richard Sterling turned, his pale blue eyes assessing Marcus, and then lingering on Katrina for a beat longer than necessary. "Thorne, I wasn't aware you were attending tonight." "Wouldn't miss it," Marcus said with an easy smile, ignoring the slight. "The buzz around this new foundation has been deafening. Any idea who our mystery benefactor is?" Sterling gave a non-committal shrug. "They're playing it close to the vest. All I know is they have deep pockets and a grand vision, and they've managed to get every important person in the city into one room. That alone is a show of force." He gave Katrina a polite, dismissive nod. "Ms. Lowell. Katrina Lowell," she said, her voice a silky purr. Marcus guided her away after a few more pleasantries, a knot of irritation tightening in his stomach. Sterling's greeting had been cooler than he'd expected. He chalked it up to the older man's naturally gruff demeanor. They found their assigned table, number 12, perfectly situated, with a clear view of the stage. The centerpiece was a stunning ice sculpture of a phoenix. Marcus felt a smug satisfaction. He and Katrina made a striking couple, a portrait of success and glamour. He ordered a bottle of Dom Perignon, and as the champagne was poured, he leaned in close to Katrina. "See that man at the table to our left? That's Michael Chen. Controls half the AI startups in Silicon Valley. The woman he's with just sold her biotech firm for $2 billion. He was giving her a tour of the power landscape, but he was also reminding himself that he belonged here. Katrina listened, captivated. She was the perfect audience, impressed by the names and the money, her admiration for him growing with every sentence. This was what he was missing with Eleanor. His wife understood finance on an academic level, but she lacked the visceral hunger for the game, the appreciation for the kill. As the ballroom filled, the ambient noise grew into a symphony of clinking glasses, discreet laughter, and whispered deals. Marcus worked the room, leaving Katrina at the table like a beautiful placeholder. He moved from one influential group to another, dropping insights about market trends, sharing a well-timed joke, and forging the casual connections that were the true currency of this world. He felt powerful, alive, the master of his universe. He returned to the table just as the lights began to dim, signaling the start of the evening's program. A renowned journalist, serving as the master of ceremonies, walked onto the stage. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the inaugural Phoenix Gala," the MC began, his voice resonant and warm. "We are all here tonight to celebrate the launch of a truly revolutionary endeavor, an organization poised to change the world as we know it, the Vance Foundation for Sustainable Innovation." Marcus froze, the champagne flute halfway to his lips. Vance? It had to be a coincidence. It was a common enough name. He glanced at Katrina, but she was looking at the stage, entranced. His heart began to beat a little faster. He told himself he was being ridiculous. Eleanor's family name was Vance, yes, but they were comfortable, not titans of philanthropy. Her father was a retired history professor. Her mother tended her garden in Connecticut. They were not the type to launch a global foundation. The MC continued, "For months, the identity of the foundation's founder has been a closely guarded secret. This visionary has assembled a world-class team, secured hundreds of millions in initial funding, and has done so with a level of quiet modesty that is as rare as it is admirable." A cold dread, slick and oily, began to seep into Marcus's veins. It was an impossible thought, a fantasy so absurd he almost laughed it off. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was beginning to sprout with terrifying speed. He thought of Eleanor's quiet trips to what she called her book club, her later nights on her laptop that she'd dismissed as organizing family photos. He thought of the knowing, almost pitying, look in Alistair Finch's eyes when he'd spotted the old lawyer across the room earlier. "This is not just about charity," the MC's voice boomed through the silent ballroom. "It's about investment. Investment in our planet, in our future, and in the brilliant minds who will lead us there. And now, the moment you have all been waiting for. It is my profound honor to introduce you to the heart and soul behind this incredible initiative, the founder and chairwoman of the Vance Foundation, Mrs. Eleanor Vance Thorne." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Vance Thorne. It was not a coincidence. It was a targeted missile. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The air grew thick and heavy, the murmuring of the crowd fading into a distant roar. He felt 100 pairs of eyes on him, though he knew they were all looking at the stage. He turned his head in a slow, robotic motion, his gaze drawn inexorably toward the spotlight. And there she was. The first sign that the evening was not going according to his meticulously crafted plan was subtle, a fleeting detail he almost missed. As Marcus and Katrina were being led to their table, he caught the eye of Alistair Finch, who was seated at a prime table near the stage with a group of stern-looking individuals in their 60s and 70s. Alistair, Eleanor's blowhard family lawyer, a man Marcus had always dismissed as a relic from a bygone era. What was he doing here? He was a small-time estate planner, not a player in this league. Alistair met his gaze, and for a split second, the old man's expression wasn't one of polite recognition. It was something else. A flicker of cold, calculated satisfaction. It was the look of a chess master who has just cornered the king. Marcus felt a prickle of unease but dismissed it. The old man was probably just surprised to see him. The feeling returned, stronger this time, when he was making his rounds. He approached Jonathan Price, a notoriously shrewd hedge fund manager he was trying to court for an investment in one of Apex's new tech funds. "Jonathan, great to see you," Marcus said, clapping him on the shoulder. Price turned, his smile thin and brittle. "Marcus, an unexpected pleasure." The emphasis on unexpected was unmistakable. I'd heard you were in Geneva this weekend. The blood in Marcus's veins turned to ice water. How could Price possibly know about his lie? A last-minute change of plans. Marcus recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. The deal I was working on closed faster than expected. You know how it is. I do, Price said, his eyes glinting with an amusement that did not reach his smile. He then turned his back, pointedly resuming his conversation with someone else. The rebuff was as sharp as a slap. Marcus retreated, his confident swagger faltering for the first time. He scanned the room with a new, paranoid lens. Were people looking at him strangely? Was that a whispered comment he overheard as he passed a table of society doyens? He felt a sudden, suffocating sense of being watched, of being the butt of a joke he didn't understand. He returned to his table, his mood soured. Katrina, oblivious, was taking a selfie, angling her phone to get the diamond bracelet in the shot. "Everything okay, handsome?" she asked, not looking up from her screen. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," he snapped, his voice harsher than he intended. "Just tired of the glad handing." The lights began to dim then, and the MC took the stage. As the man began his introductory speech, Marcus's anxiety spiked. He tried to focus on the words, but his mind was racing, replaying the odd encounters, Alistair Finch's cold smile, Jonathan Price's loaded comment. It was like watching a series of unrelated dots slowly, menacingly, beginning to connect. A gathering of the city's finest, all here to witness the birth of a new force for global good. Marcus took a large gulp of his champagne. He needed to get a grip. This was his night. He was here with a beautiful woman, surrounded by power and money. He was letting a few strange interactions get to him. An organization poised to change the world as we know it, the Vance Foundation for Sustainable Innovation. The name landed like a punch to the gut. Vance. Eleanor's name. No, it couldn't be. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe a distant cousin he'd never met? A long-lost uncle who had struck it rich? But the name was too specific, too close. The Foundation's focus on sustainability also felt eerily familiar. He remembered Eleanor's passionate dinnertime monologues about corporate irresponsibility and environmental decay. Speeches he had usually tuned out, dismissing them as the naive idealism of someone who didn't understand how the real world worked. His heart began a frantic, panicked drumming against his ribs. The ballroom, which had felt so exhilarating moments before, now felt like a trap, the walls closing in. He looked over at Richard Sterling's table. His boss was staring intently at the stage, a look of profound concentration on his face. He seemed completely absorbed, as if he knew exactly what was coming. The identity of the Foundation's founder has been a closely guarded secret. The MC's words were a drumbeat, counting down to his doom. Marcus felt the color drain from his face. His carefully constructed reality was fracturing, hairline cracks spreading through the facade. He could feel Katrina's leg pressed against his, under the table, a touch that had been electrifying an hour ago, but now felt alien and wrong. He felt a desperate, primal urge to see his wife, to be at home in their quiet loft, to turn back the clock to a time when his life was simple and his secrets were safe. But there was no escape. "It is my profound honor to introduce you to the heart and soul behind this incredible initiative, the founder and chairwoman of the Vance Foundation, Mrs. Eleanor Vance Thorne." The name, her full name, echoed through the vast hall, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system. It was a pronouncement, a judgment, a death sentence for the life he knew. A collective gasp rippled through the audience, followed by a sudden, intense wave of murmurs. Heads turned. not just toward the stage, but toward him, toward table 12, toward the man who was supposed to be in Geneva. Marcus's world collapsed into a single point of unbearable focus, the empty space at the side of the stage. He felt Katrina stiffen beside him, her hand flying to her mouth. "Vance Thorn?" she whispered, her voice filled with a dawning, horrified comprehension. "As in, you're Eleanor?" Marcus couldn't answer. He couldn't breathe. All he could do was stare as a figure emerged from the wings, stepping into the brilliant, unforgiving glare of the spotlight. It was Eleanor, his quiet, gentle, pregnant wife, and she was glowing. Eleanor walked onto the stage with a poise that silenced the entire ballroom. She wasn't the woman Marcus had left behind in their loft that afternoon. That woman had been soft, comfortable, her world defined by the impending arrival of their child. The woman in the spotlight was a force of nature. Her sapphire blue Oscar de la Renta gown flowed around her, the deep color making her stand out against the stark backdrop of the stage. The fabric was expertly tailored to drape over her 7-month baby bump, accentuating it not as a vulnerability, but as a symbol of creation and future. Her hair, usually worn in a simple, low ponytail, was styled in elegant waves that framed a face radiating an almost celestial confidence. Her only jewelry was a pair of simple diamond stud earrings and her wedding ring, which seemed to catch the light with an ironic gleam. She looked directly out at the sea of stunned faces, her gaze sweeping over them, calm and commanding. Marcus was certain her eyes found his for a fraction of a second, a moment of connection so intense it felt like a physical shock. In that fleeting glance, he saw no anger, no hysteria. He saw something far more terrifying: absolute clarity. She stepped up to the podium, her movements fluid and unhurried. The murmuring in the crowd died down, replaced by a breathless, expectant silence. She placed her hands lightly on the sides of the lectern and smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear and steady, amplified throughout the hall. It was the same voice that had asked him if he wanted coffee in the morning, but now it held an authority he had never heard before. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate the beginning of a new chapter." Marcus sat frozen, a statue carved from ice. He was vaguely aware of Katrina beside him, who seemed to have shrunk into herself, her face pale with shock. He could feel the weight of hundreds of stares, a palpable pressure on his skin. He saw Richard Sterling turn his head slightly, his gaze fixing on Marcus with an expression of pure, unadulterated contempt. The social fabric of the room was reweaving itself in real time, and he was being cast out. "For a long time," Eleanor continued, her eyes scanning the front rows, "I have believed that true strength isn't about the noise you make, but about the foundations you build. It's not about proclaiming your value, but about creating it, quietly, diligently, and with unwavering integrity." Every word was a perfectly aimed dart. Integrity. The word hung in the air, shimmering with unspoken meaning. Marcus felt it pierce him, a white-hot point of shame. "That is the principle upon which the Vance Foundation was built," she said, gesturing to the large screen behind her, where the Foundation's elegant logo now appeared. "My grandmother, whose name the Foundation honors, taught me that legacy isn't what you acquire, it's what you leave behind. It's about ensuring the world you pass on to your children is better, cleaner, and more just than the one you inherited." She paused, and her hand went to her stomach, a simple, maternal gesture that was simultaneously intimate and public. The entire room seemed to hold its breath with her. "This work has become more personal to me than ever in recent months," she said, her voice softening with genuine emotion. "As I prepare to bring my own child into this world, the urgency of this mission has become my singular focus. I want to build a future for my son that is rooted in honesty, in purpose, and in the fundamental truth that our actions have consequences." The subtext was so thick it was suffocating. Honesty. Consequences. This wasn't a launch speech. It was a character assassination delivered with the grace of a ballerina and the precision of a surgeon. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't shed a tear. She hadn't even mentioned his name. She didn't need to. Every person in that room understood. They knew Marcus Thorne was supposed to be in Geneva. They saw the beautiful young woman sitting beside him, dripping in diamonds. They heard his pregnant wife on stage speaking of honesty. The equation was simple, brutal, and undeniable. He watched, horrified, as Penelope Reed, the city's most influential and feared gossip columnist, scribbled furiously in her notepad, her expression one of predatory glee. His career, his reputation, his entire carefully constructed life was being dismantled, sentence by elegant sentence, in front of everyone who mattered. The Vance Foundation will invest in the innovators, the dreamers, the builders, Eleanor declared, her voice rising with passion. We will seek out and fund the technologies that others deem too risky. We will build bridges between capital and conscience. We will prove that profitability and responsibility are not mutually exclusive. A round of applause started, spontaneously, from the table where Alistair Finch was sitting. It spread like wildfire throughout the room, a thunderous, sustained ovation. It was an endorsement not just of her mission, but of her, a collective acknowledgement of her power, and a condemnation of his betrayal. Eleanor smiled and nodded, accepting the applause with a humble grace that only twisted the knife deeper. She was magnificent. She was everything he had accused her of not being: powerful, dynamic, and the absolute center of attention. He had traded a goddess for a glittering trinket, and the entire world was now his witness. As the applause died down, she delivered her final, devastating lines. "Thank you again for joining me. Together we will build a legacy we can be proud of, a foundation that is strong, true, and unshakable." She stepped back from the podium, and the lights came up. The illusion was over. The night of reckoning had begun. Marcus Thorne was trapped in the glare, exposed and utterly, irrevocably ruined. The moment the applause for Eleanor subsided, a new sound filled the ballroom, the frantic, excited buzz of gossip. The air, which had been electric with inspiration, was now charged with the lurid energy of scandal. It was a feeding frenzy, and Marcus Thorne was the bait. He remained motionless at his table, the world a blurry, indistinct chaos around him. People were standing up, turning to their neighbors, their faces a mixture of shock, pity, and delicious, Schadenfreude-fueled glee. He could feel their eyes on him like physical blows. He was no longer Marcus Thorne, the Titan in training. He was a story, a headline, a cautionary tale. Katrina was the first to move. The color had completely drained from her face, leaving a pasty, terrified mask. The Harry Winston bracelet, which had seemed like a symbol of triumph an hour ago, now looked like a shackle. I have to go," she stammered, grabbing her clutch from the table. She didn't look at him. She couldn't. Her eyes were darting around the room, seeing her own social standing evaporating in the fallout of his implosion. She had hitched her wagon to a falling star, and her only instinct was to uncouple it as fast as possible. "Katrina, wait," Marcus managed to say, his voice a dry croak. "Don't!" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. Don't you dare speak to me. You have ruined me." She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and practically fled, weaving through the tables without a backward glance. He watched her go, a small, pathetic part of him wanting her to stay, to offer some solidarity in this public execution. But he knew it was a fool's hope. Theirs was a union of convenience and ambition, not loyalty. It had no foundation. His gaze was then drawn, as if by a magnetic force, to Richard Sterling's table. His CEO rose from his chair, a man who commanded attention without ever raising his voice. He wasn't walking toward the stage to congratulate Eleanor. He was walking directly toward Marcus. The entire ballroom seemed to go quiet again, watching this new act in the drama unfold. Sterling stopped before Marcus's table, his face an inscrutable granite slab. He looked down at Marcus, who remained seated, pinned by the weight of the older man's disapproval. "Thorn," Sterling said, his voice quiet, but carrying the chilling finality of a judge's gavel. "My office, Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Clear out your desk beforehand." He didn't wait for a response. He simply turned and walked away, a silent, devastating dismissal. And with those few words, Marcus's career at Apex Ventures, the career for which he had sacrificed his integrity, his marriage, and his soul, was over. Now he was truly alone. A pariah at a party he had desperately wanted to attend. He finally found the strength to stand, his legs feeling unsteady beneath him. He had to get to Eleanor. He had to say something, do something, try to salvage some piece of the wreckage. He moved through the room like a ghost. People who had been eager to shake his hand an hour ago now pointedly turned their backs, suddenly engrossed in conversation or the pattern on the carpet. The air around him was a vacuum of social ostracism. He found her backstage, in a small private room, accepting congratulations from Alistair Finch and a few of her board members. When she saw him enter, she calmly dismissed them. "If you'll excuse us for a moment," she said, her voice betraying no emotion. The others filed out, casting wary glances at Marcus as they passed. The door clicked shut, leaving the two of them alone. The silence was deafening. She stood by a window overlooking the city, her silhouette framed by the glittering skyline she had just conquered. She didn't look at him. "Eleanor," he began, his voice cracking. I don't know what to say." "That's a first," she said, her tone flat and cold. "You always have a story, Marcus. A summit in Geneva, a mandatory meeting. You're never at a loss for words. Listen, I can explain." "No," she said, finally turning to face him. Her eyes were hard, the soft warmth he took for granted, completely gone. "You can't. There is no explanation for this level of disrespect, not just to me, but to our child. I made a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake," he pleaded, taking a step toward her. "I was wrong. I was scared about the baby, about everything changing. Scared." She let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of all humor. "You weren't scared, Marcus. You were bored. You thought I was boring. You looked at me, carrying your son, and all you saw was the end of your exciting life. So you went out and bought yourself a new one, a shinier one. How is that working out for you?" Her words were scalpels, dissecting him with brutal accuracy. "I love you, Eleanor," he said, the words feeling hollow and false, even to his own ears. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can do nothing," she interrupted, her voice dropping to a near whisper, which was somehow more terrifying than if she had screamed. "You seem to be under the impression that this was an act of jealous revenge, that I did all of this to hurt you. You've always had a magnificent ego." She took a step closer, and for the first time, He saw the deep, profound pain behind the steely resolve. This wasn't for you, Marcus. This was for me. This was about me taking back my name, my power, and the future you tried to poison with your lies. The gala was always happening. My foundation was always my priority. The only thing your betrayal changed was the guest list. He stared at her, finally understanding the depth of his miscalculation. He hadn't just cheated on his wife. He had fundamentally misunderstood who she was. He had been playing checkers while she was playing three-dimensional chess. "My lawyer will be in touch with yours on Monday," she said, turning back toward the window, a clear dismissal. "Alistair has already drawn up the divorce papers. I'll be generous for the baby's sake. But make no mistake, we are over." "Eleanor, please," he begged, his voice breaking. "Don't do this." She didn't turn around. "It's already done. You should probably go, Marcus. You're creating a scene." He stood there for another moment, a broken man in a bespoke suit, looking at the back of the woman he had so casually thrown away. He had walked into this ballroom thinking he was on top of the world. He was leaving it with nothing. He turned and walked out of the room, out of the gala, and out of her life, the sound of her quiet success echoing behind him. 6 months later, the city was settling into the crisp embrace of early spring. The cherry blossoms were beginning to bloom in Central Park, their delicate pink and white petals a testament to renewal and new beginnings. For Eleanor Vance, the symbolism was not lost. Her life had been reborn from the ashes of her marriage. The Phoenix Gala had been a resounding success, not just as a public relations coup, but as the launch pad for a genuinely impactful organization. The Vance Foundation for Sustainable Innovation was the talk of both the financial and philanthropic worlds. Eleanor had proven to be a shrewd and visionary leader, attracting top-tier talent and securing partnerships with some of the most innovative green tech companies on the planet. She was featured on the cover of Forbes, not as a spurned wife, but as a titan of tomorrow. Her greatest achievement, however, was currently sleeping soundly in a bassinet by her desk. Her son, Arthur Vance, was 2 months old, a beautiful, healthy baby, with his mother's calm eyes and a dusting of soft brown hair. He was the center of her universe, the quiet, gurgling purpose behind every decision she made. She had dropped the Thorn from her name the day the divorce was finalized, severing the last formal tie to her past. She was Eleanor Vance now, a name that was entirely her own, and a name she would one day proudly pass to her son. Her Soho loft, once a shared space filled with ghosts and lies, had been redecorated. The cold, minimalist aesthetic Marcus had favored was gone, replaced with warm colors, comfortable furniture, and shelves filled with books and photographs of her family. It was a home now, not just a showcase. Marcus, by contrast, had all but disappeared. The fallout from the gala had been swift and brutal. Fired from Apex Ventures, he had been effectively blacklisted on Wall Street. The story was too public, the humiliation too complete. No reputable firm would touch him. Penelope Reed's column had detailed every sordid aspect of the affair, painting him as a fool and a cad. Katrina Lowell had faded into obscurity, her brand ambassador career torpedoed by the scandal. He had sold his sports car and moved out of the city, retreating to a small, rented condo in a faceless suburb. He had tried in the beginning to fight. His lawyers had postured and threatened, but Alistair Finch had systematically dismantled their every argument. The prenuptial agreement was ironclad, and Eleanor's settlement offer was, as she had promised, more than generous. It was enough for him to live comfortably, but not enough to ever reclaim the life of power and luxury he had coveted. One Tuesday afternoon, as Eleanor was reviewing a proposal for a new desalination technology, her assistant buzzed her. "Miss Vance, there's a Marcus Thorne here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." Eleanor felt a flicker of something, not anger, not sadness, but a distant, weary pity. "Send him in, Sarah." He walked into her office, and the change was startling. The bespoke suit was gone, replaced by a rumpled blazer and slacks that didn't quite fit. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a hesitant, shuffling gait. He looked tired and diminished. "Eleanor," he said, his voice quiet. "Marcus, what can I do for you?" she asked, her tone polite but professional. She didn't stand up. I wanted to see him," he said, his eyes flicking to the bassinet. Eleanor considered it for a moment, then nodded. "Of course." She picked Arthur up gently. The baby stirred but remained asleep, his little chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. She held him out for Marcus to see, but did not offer for him to hold him. Marcus stared at his son, his face a complex mixture of regret, wonder, and profound loss. This tiny, perfect human was a part of him, yet he was a complete stranger. He had been so consumed by the fear of what a child would take from him that he had never stopped to consider what one could give. "He's perfect," Marcus whispered, a tear tracing a path down his cheek. "Yes, he is," Eleanor said simply. They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the soft breathing of the baby. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," Marcus finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything. I was an idiot. I threw away the only real thing in my life for nothing. For smoke." Eleanor looked at him, and for the first time she felt the last vestiges of her anger dissipate, leaving only a calm, quiet emptiness where her love for him used to be. "I know you are, Marcus," she said, and it was the truth. She could see the sincerity of his remorse, but it didn't change anything. A vase that has been shattered can be glued back together, but the cracks will always show. Some things, once broken, can never be truly fixed. "I've accepted your apology," she continued, "for my own peace of mind, and for Arthur's. You are his father, and you will have a place in his life. We will arrange a visitation schedule. But that is all we will have." He nodded, understanding. The hope for reconciliation he may have been foolishly clinging to was gone. He had come here seeking absolution, perhaps even a second chance. He was leaving with a visitation schedule. It was more than he deserved, and far less than he had lost. After he left, Eleanor stood by the window of her office, rocking her son gently in her arms. She looked out over the city, the same view Marcus once had, but she saw it differently. He had seen it as a ladder to be climbed, a prize to be won. She saw it as a world to be improved, a future to be built. She had lost a husband, but she had found herself. She had endured betrayal, but she had discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. Her foundation wasn't just the one she had built for the world, it was the one she had rebuilt for herself and her son. It was strong, true, and utterly unshakable. And from this new dawn, the future looked bright. The story of Eleanor Vance is a powerful reminder that the quietest people often have the most to say, and that true power isn't about the life you project, but the one you build with integrity. Marcus Thorne thought he was trading up, but he traded a diamond for dust, blinded by his own reflection. He learned the hard way that a person's true worth is revealed not when they are in the spotlight, but when they are the ones who control the switch. What did you think of Eleanor's incredible moment of triumph? Was her revenge perfectly orchestrated, or would you have done something different? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and your perspective makes our community richer. If you were captivated by this story of betrayal and empowerment, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who loves a good story, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next upload. Thanks for listening.